So, hello, I am Umang Badetia. I'm a journalist at BSP. I am accompanied today by Yashas Vatsyayan, who is the GSec of BRCA. So, hello Yashas, how are you?
Hey Umang, I'm doing great today.
So, can you please give the viewers a brief introduction about yourself, your history with BRCA, and your visions which you have for BRCA in your tenure as a GSec?
Okay, so I started in my second year. Like my first interaction officially with BRCA was when I became a dramatics representative in my second year. Until then, throughout my first year, I was very active in every club I had. I used to, every time my seniors would float any sort of message on the group, I would instantly try to join, actively participate. Second year में मैं drama rep बन गया. Throughout the second year, drama करते गया, and on the side मैं quizzing, literary and music थोड़ा बहुत किया हूँ. तो this evolved into me becoming cultural secretary of my hostel, Shivalik, in the third year, and I had an amazing time as cultural secretary of Shivalik. Throughout the year, we planned a lot, put in a lot of work for events, and we ended up second in the BRCA overall GC. So yeah, and throughout all this, I thought I had seen enough and learned enough and fallen in love enough with the board to go for general secretary, and looks like I ended up winning. So
Okay.
that's pretty cool. So that's all about me and my interactions with BRCA so far. Now, for my vision for BRCA, given everything that is going on right now, my aim is just to simply make BRCA much more inclusive. On a more liberal front, I'd like to make BRCA much more inclusive for people, right? But on a more radical front, I think we can up our competitive game much better. And you might see in my SOP that there are initiatives and everything that we plan on taking in order to increase our team's competence and capabilities.
So you have mentioned your SOP. So starting with your SOP, the first point I see is about the Inter-IT performance and how it can be better. And uske liye you have suggested a few points. So let us start with the external participation. Uske liye you have suggested 2 points basically, like travel budgets for the externals and lecture tutorial attendance waivers. So uske upar kya progress hui hai? Like did you have any conversations with it?
Anji. So just for some context, yeah, external participation in external events is one of the main ways we get our exposure as a contingent and how we upgrade our skills. And what stops external participation in our institute is basically, obviously, people having to put up their own money and effort into going participating in externals, nothing being provided by the institute, and secondly, they're also putting their attendance on the line, right? So the basic idea with this was to basically incentivize attending externals. Now, we have had conversation on this, and the defense we have got so far, we have been refused so far for the attendance waiver, because the moment you do start waiving attendance, the risk you run is people start bunking their lectures just so they can go on externals and have fun outside. What this will transpire into more affected, like worse grades, lower grades, and just BRCA being held accountable for ruining students' academic performances. We did try to give them a structure where we put a cap on how many events you can go for. So we did say that what if we identify only so and so fests for which we will allow this provision, and this is something that is currently being discussed with the admin. But none of it is final so far. Budget, alright, so there was a question about travel budget. So travel budget is really not an issue. Last year also, actually, people kept taking money out of their club budgets for travel arrangements. It's been happening this year. It happens, and it's not an issue at all. This part, there is no resistance.
Okay. So, like, why can't we put a cap on the number of days? Like, okay, you attend externals on you can attend in a semester. आप 15 days or 20 days आपको external attend कर सकते हो कोई भी external events. Why can't we do that? And उसके एक optimal amount of period discussed by the admin and everyone, so that जो professors है they can also say कि okay, these are the 7 classes या फिर 14 classes, इनकी वजह से they won't have any issue with like academics and everything, and they will be able to cope up and do cultural activities as well side by side.
That's a good point. So, what we had tried so far, like our intention with the cap on the number of fests you can go to was similar to this. But yeah, I understand like personalizing to each student would mean that you would have to get personalizing to each student's, like every student instead selects the days themselves which they want to skip. The issue here is now we need to look for days where there are no lab attendance is its sanctity cannot be broken. Like this has been very clearly specified by admin that they can, how many makeup labs can one hold, right? So lab attendance cannot be waived. Tutes and lectures का फिर भी बात कर सकते हैं अब if for this provision where people decide to plan out their days in advance. So this would also require a lot of paperwork beforehand where someone would outline their days beforehand, submit it to someone in their department, most probably their HOD or their course coordinators for the courses in question which they would be missing. But yes, this is an idea that we can workshop. We haven't yet got this. Thank you for this idea.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, so moving on to the next pointer. Okay, you have a pointer that is events that fall outside the current club's domain, like the culinary skills and the stand-up comedy. So while I was preparing the questionnaire, there was no update on it. And since then, a recruitment process has started for the culinary team. Can you explain the process and how you all will be proceeding? Like, what is the number of response you are getting right now? And then what will be the selection process for Inter-IIT and everything?
Right, so what we've seen so far with our initiative for the culinary club, we're also going to try to do something similar for stand-up comedy. But our work with the culinary club was, so far we've put out forms to gauge interest. You guys might remember, for viewers from IIT Delhi, you might remember a similar forum being floated last year, and that showed us that there was a lot of interest in having the concept of a culinary club. This year we have actual responses for people willing to join and people ready to like actually competitively cook. And what this is, the pipeline so far is the forums have gone out. We've got a huge number of responses from our campus. We've got around 300 responses so far for a contingent that requires 4 people. But yeah, how this works is now, obviously you can't vet 300, logistically you cannot vet 300 people's cooking skills, and this is 300 while the forum is open. So there is many more responses to be had while the forum is open. So we cannot be vetting people's skills offline, right? This is dependent purely on forum responses and submissions, like photo submissions and everything about, like we look at it, we have a very capable person heading the culinary club, Maithili, and we're sort of relying on her experience and everything to vet for people's responses based on what they've written in their form. And this is going to transpire into us picking about 10 people finally, out of which 4 will finally go for 4 to 6 will finally go for the Inter-IIT. And hopefully, like with these interested candidates, now we can actually set up a more continuous process and finally maybe transpire into an actual culinary club.
So like what are you planning for stand-up comedy? Like you are planning a similar thing, will you have auditions, offline auditions?
And the offline audition again, so stand-up comedy is also something that many people find themselves attracted towards, like to try performing. And again, it's not feasible to conduct offline. We haven't yet gauged responses, but right now, as it stands, we think it will be very tough to do offline gauging of skills. So this is mostly going to be asking. So far, we've only so much as figured out a structure where we try continuously sending people to open mics, which we fund, and that's what it's been so far. We shortlist interested people, we shortlist people we think do well, and we start funding their attendance, we start funding their performances at open mics and everything in the Delhi circuit, which there is no lack of. You guys might see on Book My Show and everything that there are always open mics happening.
And like, are there any activities which I have not mentioned, like which are a part of Inter-IIT? Right,
so there are other things that we don't really, even like improv, and there are a few more, and really the events of Inter-IIT change also every year. So a lot more of this. Some of this we can prepare for beforehand, like we know culinary club happens every time, we know stand-up happens every time, but the rest of it is more instantaneous. It's a feedback system. As soon as we see that there's a competition like that, then we start preparing for it.
And okay, so I had a question about like why can't we start a culinary club, because other IITs have those as well. You have kind of answered the question. So okay, just elaborate on it. These subjects do fall under the BRCA domain, and we can like you're talking about how can we judge like 300 dishes and everything. Like why can't we like do it like under we have hostel competitions also. So for other clubs we have hostel competitions. There we see a few people shining and doing stuff. Why can't we do why can't we create culinary clubs? Like in your SOP you have said that BRCA has enough logistics to support these skills, so we can have like a competition or two throughout the year. Like even if it's not a recognized club right now, we can just have like something, and the people who are participating, the people who are active, they can get like a sort of let's say an exposure to like what the culinary teams are. Like the coordinator, I think Mathli ma'am, she gets to know who are the interested people, and that kinds of streamlines the process for Inter-IT. So why can't we try this?
You're right. So we can. This is a great point. Problem is now that we have in our one semester of barely any bandwidth due to Rendezvous and a few other things we have planned, it's holding culinary club events for this Inter-IT is not going to be feasible. But obviously, once we set up a continuous calendar where we have culinary club events, then from the next Inter-IT onwards, we won't really have issues with this. And yes, we do. As soon as there is a procedure, an actual constitutionally defined procedure for an activity to become a recognized club, and before so there's a similar thing that can be done for culinary club to be formed. But otherwise there's really nothing else.
So how long does it take for a skill to become a club?
So the way this works is now over 1 year you have to have. So first there is a meet at the start of the year where it is defined as a provisional club.
Yeah.
Right. So this meet has not yet taken place for this year. There are 2 clubs in contention for this currently, but this meet takes place in the start of the year.
Yeah.
Then it is decided that a certain activity will become a provisional activity under the wing of another existing club.
Okay.
So we need to also figure out when the culinary club does come up, we need to figure out who to club it with.
Yeah.
So then you have to go through 1 year as a provisional club, sharing a budget with the club, and most of your official work is going to be done through the club who's taking care of you. And finally, at the end of the year, if there are more than 30 participants more than 30 people showing a recurring interest in your events, then you are good enough to become a club. So at the end of the year, there's another meet that is convened, and people vote for whether they should become a club or not.
Okay, and feedback is taken from everyone.
Numbers are taken at events and competitions alike.
Yeah.
So it is known how much traction an event is getting.
Okay, so now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Rendezvous. And if we are talking about Rendezvous, let's talk about its biggest Indian competitor, Moon Indigo. So I just wanted to ask you, last year they made headlines because they got in a lot of foreign artists, and they had set a how to put it, they had set a vibe and that thing made a lot of headlines. So because they were a foreign artist. So why don't we explore this option for RDV as well? Like there are a lot of foreign artists, a lot of indie artists, and with platforms like Instagram and YouTube, they are growing, and their music are getting recognition more and more through reels and shorts. So why can't we call those famous trending artists and showcase them in RDV?
So this is a great point actually. So admin is also in favor of calling such smaller talent but up and coming talent that we've identified that they would also like to listen to. So this is actually a process that our events team is currently working on. We do have on a much bigger scale, we have a global confluence plan which our very capable team is working on. And for the global confluence and the way the global confluence works is we're inviting artists and performers and basically from all over the world, and they're going to come and showcase their talents here at Rendezvous. We're giving them a platform to meet together and showcase their talents. And so far from our mailing, our capable team so far has mailed multiple people and received a lot of responses for interested candidates from all over, from multiple continents, multiple nations. I would not like to disclose exactly what is what right now because for obvious reasons I would not like to disclose. But
okay, and what is the conversion rate if you know about anything?
So from the mails we've sent out so far, from what I understand is we've had like a 40% hit rate of interested responses coming back to us, which is a very healthy rate. From cold mailing leading to 40% traction is great.
Okay, so in your recipe, I saw another point that was about the manifests, and I love it, and I would love to see this happen. So, can you comment on the feasibility and clarify this pointer for those who don't have any idea?
Right. So, okay, the mini fests, mini comps is basically, I think, a better way to call them. Fests gives maybe the wrong idea. So, what the plan here was, now when we have 11 different clubs and not all of them, when all their events happen together, like they do in Rendezvous, certain clubs don't get enough attention. And when their events happen too far apart, some people just avoid clubs that don't have as much of a name, right? So the idea was now to cluster clubs together and put them into different buckets, for which we'll hold external competitions over the year, and this will lead to a better cultural brand label for IIT Delhi. It'll lead to more competence being developed in our team that has to perform over here. And over there, this will be another great pipeline for identifying new talent and upping our game for Inter-IIT. Right? So the exact way this works is, now we bucketed the clubs on the basis of their common features. Right? So what we have is, for example, in our 11 clubs, we have our QLD, the Quizzing, Literary and Deb. We'll be putting those together. We have PFD, the PFC, Fact and Design, the Visual Arts, which we put together. Now in the Performing Arts, we've included Spikmake, music and dance together, because of a very common trait between them, being the heavy musical orientation that they have, and the final bucket being HS, which is Hindi Samiti, and dramatics. The two of these go hand in hand, and this will ensure that a lot of attention is given to both dramatics and HS. Dramatics has no lack of attention, as I understand it. HS is growing, and although it does get a lot of traction, it could certainly use much more when it is helped and boosted by dramatics. So the reason now, when we have these four, about the feasibility of the calendar, we have, as you guys understand, for our viewers from IIT Delhi, until the start of October, we have our rendezvous plans and execution, right? So what that leaves us with is, from the start of October to say the third week of November, the second week of November, before our major exams start. And in this time, our job is basically now to identify 2 weekends. The idea is to have two of these weekends with competitions in the first semester and 2 of them in the second semester. So now in our first semester, we need to identify 2 weekends in between the dates I mentioned, which is the starting of the first week of October and the second week of November. And that really shouldn't be an issue now that we've had more experience with admin and handling and realizing how security works. Setting these up shouldn't be much of a problem. It is just now the question is really, how well do we publicize this? How well do we send out our invites and such? Right? So in our first 2 in this semester, we've planned on putting the less resource intensive comps, which is the QLD, Quizzing, Literary, Deb, which take barely any resources and logistics to set up, and secondly the PFD, PFC, Fact, Design. Right? These are more submission based. These don't require a lot of logistics of our own. They are more submission based and exhibitions, and so it will be much easier to set up in a SEM that is already eating up most of our bandwidth. In the second SEM, we'll have our 2 visual arts competitions, our visual arts weekend, not our visual arts, my bad, performing arts weekends, which is our Spic, music and dance, and our dramatics and HS. There is another reason this is also more convenient. One is we have our increased bandwidth from not having to do rendezvous in the SEM. And the second reason is the societies, our main competitors, which is the DU societies, they do the recruitments during our first SEM, and they are prepared with their productions and their they're prepared with the competitive productions in the even SEM, which is when all the DU fests happen. So we'll have a much better quality of competition as well when we host our performing arts comps in the second SEM. And so again, it just boils down to picking out 2 weekends in the second SEM. We don't have rendezvous to conduct, so it's a question of finding weekends in between other boards' fests, and that shouldn't be much of a problem.
But okay, let's say we don't have any problem on the calendar, but then do we not overburden the teams, overburden the clubs? Let's talk about the performance arts. they have to prepare like a performance of their own, and that takes like a lot of time. Basically, like for even the freshers, I remember like my neighbor who was in the street play. He was going like at 8 p.m. and returning at 12, and like during the last few days he was like returning at 4 to 5 a.m. And that is like for a play like that is not even competitive. Now we have like an extra like sort of load on the team, and I think that might hinder with the academic performances as well. Talking about, let's say, not even about performance club, let's talk about the quizzing club. They already conduct like 8 quizzes on Rendezvous, 7 to 8 quizzes during literati, that's 15. Then they have 6 league quizzes, 21. Then like BRCA quizzes, 4 of them, and then other fests also. So basically like an informal, so 35 quizzes basically in a year, and that is excluding, let's say, the external participation in like the Inter-IT prep and everything that they are going through. So don't you think in a way, like even if we have those weekends, we are quite literally overburdening like the reps and everyone? Or the
So
team?
that is a good point, really. Matlab, at what point do you draw the line between actual like comfort and then going out and doing where does the line? That's right. That's a good question. Where does the line exist, right? So so first of all, I'd like to address the quizzing club part. As I understand it, there are different people that conduct quizzes, right? There is no lack of enthusiastic candidates, yourself included, to conduct quizzes, right? So there are multiple people ready to hold quizzes and who will happily conduct the quizzes. And when there's and more than 35, even if it's just enlisting new people every time to hold a quiz.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a question of feasibility for the as a quizzing club. Multiple people can come and hold quizzes. There is no dearth of enthusiastic and willing candidates to hold quizzes. Yeah, but as you mentioned, dramatics and performing arts, these guys have to put up entire productions multiple times. And yeah, it's part of the game, dude. Matlab, when you have a Rendezvous is when they prepare their first like hardcore external comp production, and what a lot of DO societies also do, which is something we can adopt, is preparing one production which they will use for the entire fest season. They prepare one play or one street play, one stage play. That is their entry for every single fest across DU, and every single time they just improve based on feedback they get, which is a model I think we can also try adopting for our performing arts. But otherwise, more than that, if you want to get better competitively, I'd say, bro, it's part of the game.
Okay, so basically, if you are in the team, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, exactly. This is the risk you run when you sign up.
So, also one of the more controversial questions, and something all of us would love to know: any update on the RDV Pronite venues, or any sneak peeks you want to give us?
So what we know so far is from. Okay, I would neither confirm nor deny anything by saying this, but October 5th to 8th, Alan Walker will be in Delhi on those days. And that's all I'd like to leave you with for now. Baki, nothing is final, nothing is confirmed, and nothing is denied either.
And about the Pronite venues?
Oh, Pronite venues. So again, we are constantly trying to ask about how feasible it is to get the football ground and trying to go and pitch our claims and our plans to the admin. And we are constantly the idea is reinforced that it's a very big security hazard given the incidents going on. There are multiple fest incidents. We had our own incidents in last year, and in the last Rendezvous and the last Rendezvous we had incidents of our own. There have been incidents in other places as well, like in other fests of stampeding and very gruesome details and very grim casualties that at any cost need to be avoided. And so the High Court has themselves issued like a set of sanctions that we have to be upholding, and the admin isn't very in favor of, with appropriate reason. They are not very in favor of holding something on such a grand scale, especially when we have venues that can distribute and divert crowd much better.
So, okay, Okay, so now like moving away from RDV, we will see a lot of progress in the upcoming weeks. You will be hearing a lot of rumors, and basically this guy won't confirm or deny anything. So okay, now moving to the PG participation.
Right.
So I actually, honestly speaking, I'm in second year. I don't know a lot about the PG participation, but from what I've seen, basically the performance arts, basically music, drama, dance, they all have a lot of PG participants. But the other clubs, they don't have a lot of PG participation. Like there are not a lot of people who are interested in like pursuing those ventures. And like okay, I have seen feedbacks like the PG participation can vastly be improved. Other colleges and IITs also invest in a lot in these equities. Even in CAC, they assume a lot of power and position in the decision making and are active participants in the board's workings. So you have elaborated on this pointer a lot, like organizing workshops and the same mini fest or mini comps which you're calling sort of thing for them and increasing the stakes. So are there any special steps you have been considering or venturing into? What do you feel is the right rationale to approach this subject? And like any comment on, like elaborate your pointer and like any comments you want to make.
Okay, so that's a very valid question. It's a big problem we face. And the rationale, the main way to approach this is by looking at what their pain points are. So their issues are just not enough attention is being given, not enough communication. There are not enough channels, communication doesn't reach them in time. And there is no effort being made as such by the clubs to really include them. It's them coming of their own interest, which is why when someone has invested a lot in, say, like the only people that are interested then come and join the clubs themselves. And performing arts, that's why we see a higher trend of people going to performing arts, because it's just much more visible and people get to it. The people find themselves attracted to it much more, right? So to try to combat that problem, what we have planned for this year is an orientation of sorts being held in our very own Dronagiri Saptagiri OIT, which is a great facility for to seat multiple PG students, and we go and we pitch our clubs to them as well. We have our BRCA night where we pitch to our own freshers, our own UG freshers, and we could do something similar for postgrad students, so that obviously, one, we want to address the issue of not enough effort being put on them, because we really care. In a lot of cases, there are PG students are in a lot of cases much more experienced, much better competitively than UG students are when it comes to some certain comps. So our aim is to try to identify. So first is we'll have the orientation, then we'll try to hold similar little competitions also for exclusively PG students, and finally try to identify the PG talent. So hopefully we can get them into competing for IIT Delhi and representing IIT Delhi in much higher numbers, right? Now, as for giving them more stakes in BRCA, so this point has also been debated upon a lot. So the current pipeline for getting stakes in BRCA is for UG students, it takes one entire year of being a representative, one entire year of being a secretary, and then finally getting like one entire year of being a secchi, and then getting to a GSec or a DGsec or a core team member. Similarly, like in RDV, you'd have to go from being an AG head. Your AG head performance would be evaluated before you are made a coordinator, which will then be evaluated before you become CTM, a core team member, right? So the point is longevity. As long as people can see what you've been doing over multiple years, that's when they trust you enough to give you stakes, right? And that is the procedure we have defined. Now, as a postgrad student, there is a severe lack of time. If this takes 3 years and most PG students are here for 2, then this process has to really be defined and restructured in a way that suits them as well. And we've had instances of, but the problem is, again, because we cannot evaluate their sort of performance over multiple years, we just have to make exception cases after we understand their prior experience from them. And then we can give them increased stakes. Such as we've had PG CTMs before, and this was we've had in our quick response team of last year's RDV team. And as you will see, there are inclusions made even in this year's RDV team. But so far we're going purely on exception basis and trying to understand what these guys' experience has been before we allow them into the team. There is no as such provision to directly recruit.
Okay, so you talked about like the schedule, like what we'll be conducting at the OAT of Dronagiri Saptagiri. So do you have any scheduling or anything timeline in your mind?
Right, so in this semester, so an event of scale being conducted will take a lot of bandwidth and a lot of prior prep and planning. So this sem, with all our bandwidth being on due to RDV, then the two mini comps that we want to have and the Inter-IT prep that will be required, I think it's not very feasible for us, like bandwidth wise, to hold such an orientation. So most probably what we are looking at is something similar along the lines of BRCA night being held in Dronagiri in the next semester. So in the start of the next semester is when we are planning on doing this.
Okay, so that's a lot about PG participation. So other than that, your SOP consisted of nice initiative to increase the BRCA presence on campus. I had a question regarding that. Do you not think BRCA is probably the most recognized board on the campus? And like the information about all the activities of all the clubs, they reach your hostel group, and the stories, Instagram stories, they flood your DMs. They reach everyone like within an hour basically. And so like, can we not streamline this process and invest the same in like recruiting freshers and increasing their stakes in the board? Like obviously not giving them an official position in the first year. I'm asking this because, like, let's say music and dance, these performing groups, performing clubs basically, they do take in freshers for Inter-IT, but other clubs do not explore this option even after conducting like a lots of hostel orientation workshops and the BRCA night, then conducting like freshers only competitions. And let's say let's say someone who's in the fourth year. And like talking in the quizzing context, I'm active in the quizzing club. So someone who is in the fourth year and someone who is in the first year, they can make an excellent team given the opportunity. And that is something I had observed in my first year. And even if comparing it, like paralleling it with other boards as well, in sports, like freshers are given adequate opportunities, like trials are conducted for them, like after the curfew ends, trials are conducted, like even trials are going on right now. And if we talk about instances, in chess last year, one of the freshers who went, like he was a fresher who went, and he was the best performing player in the entire team. And IIT Delhi chess, like they won a silver medal at Inter-IT meet. So why don't you think we can put in more efforts and like increase the participations of freshers in the first year for Inter-IT?
That's an excellent question. So there have been instances of freshers going, as you pointed out, from BRCA to represent IIT Delhi. So what happened in those cases was pure sweet coincidence, where that talent was noticed and then picked up and then developed upon by the respective secretary of the club. And yeah, you're right. There is no formal procedure where there is no pipeline for first years to directly get into teams, because in their first month, you know they have their probation, not their probation, their curfew period where they can't interact with seniors. After that, it's just most of the BRCS bandwidth will be in RDV.
Yeah.
And more importantly, there's just no formal structure that we've defined so far for essay. As you said, tryouts that happen in sports. There is no tryout structure that we have here in BRC. तो उसको plan करना थोड़ा ज़रूरी है.
Yeah.
और मतलब इस चीज़ को बहुत develop की जा सकती है. Like this is something that is essential. But we haven't yet gotten around to it. Maybe what we can do is start setting up a framework and try this out so that maybe next year's freshers have such a privilege.
Like setting in the foundation this year, like secretaries who are outgoing secretaries, they are telling the incoming secretaries to do this.
Setting up a structure to setting up a pipeline basically for freshers, like just at least planning it out, laying it out, and then maybe the next year's entry batch will benefit from this.
Okay, so again, a slightly controversial topic. So what is your take on the Satya for PR thing? Like can efforts not be taken by BRCA to introduce a similar structure for PORs, stuff that is implemented in other IITs and some boards like BSP also, where irrespective of the starting CGPA, your PR will be passed if you have like 7 CGPAs somewhere throughout your tenure. And like, would this not invite some candidates who missed out on 7 to work for Inter-IT as well, and give them an incentive to work academically as well? Like, academics is the main reason they missed out on a POR basically.
And so that is a refreshing perspective here. The fact that they would be willing to work, say that at the end of the year, if they have a 7, they can get their POR. But yeah, the admin's concerns right now is PORs being passed. There is a set of PORs that are also passed at the start of the year. That is so. The issue from admin side is also that they don't want an institute which is as that holds the merit as a very merit holding institution. We can't have people really just going straight into club activities and totally putting their academics aside. People have to be focusing on their academics, and this is primarily why the Sati criteria is defined. Matlab, people have to have their academics maintained along with their whatever their capacity is in clubs. So with introducing the measure of checking Satis once in every sem, matlab if from what I understood, your question said in every sem, if there was any
like throughout the tenure, if at any point they have like a 7+ CGPA, their POR can be passed.
Okay, so this is actually a model that we haven't ever put forward before to admin. This is something we can try doing actually. However, we do still have the thing where we try to make inclusions for people without, like as a board, we've tried what we can do without having to bypass the Sati criteria. Like we try putting in other PORs and extracurricular activities, including them in clubs and everything for interested candidates who couldn't make the cut. So yeah, exactly. So this is an idea. This is a great idea, and it's something that we still have to put forward to admin for checking the once between the 2 semesters thing is something we can try.
And like also there can be a gray zone. Like let's say a secretary, he knows like this person has been like participating and he has been performing. So there can be a gray zone. Like let's say above 6.7. So 6.7 to 7, they can like I think give them in like on Seki recommendation, he can become a representative of the hostel. Just because he was participating throughout, and then he will have to get like 7+. We can like take these measures also, or something along those lines.
That is, yeah, we can try pitching such a thing also for people in a grey area, as you said, in a boundary region. We can try pitching such a thing, but there is a very good chance it will get shot down. So as I was saying earlier, there are also in the start of the year you have to upload your incoming PORs. So you might have seen on your POR ECA sheet, there is a part which says what you are currently holding. There is one part that has been passed for your previous years, but there is one part that says what you are currently holding. So that is what gives you an issue. You cannot be a current holder of a POR while not having a Sati, and probably at the end of the year when you get a Sati, it then maybe passing it. That we'll have to figure out how that works basically. Given the current system we have, it will require some change.
Like because that has sparked a lot of controversies throughout the years, basically, not even this year, throughout the year.
Throughout year, this debate has been going on multiple times. There were SAC forms that were released even last year. So yeah, this debate spans multiple years.
A perennial debate.
Yep.
Okay, so another question: how does hostel culture influence BRCA as a whole? Is it on a positive side or a negative side, according to you, in terms of improving the quality of everything involved?
Okay, so that's a good question. Hostel culture. So let's look at it both ways, for the board and for the hostel, right? Within your hostel. And as I understand it, like what you're trying to point towards is like a very big competitive culture within hostels, probably spoiling.
Yeah, that was a follow question. So looking from the standpoint of recreation, do you think the board focuses more on the serious aspects like the Inter-IIT or the BRCA Cup, and like then the fun part, that is the recreational in BRCA basically?
So my view has always been that we have always given I think in my opinion that we've given a lot more attention to the recreation part, which is we judge our entire performance as a board is based heavily on how extravagant the rendezvous we conduct is, and this is something I'm not in for. I want to try setting up a framework where we get better competitively, right? So the hostel culture here, when the hostel culture, you might see that not every hostel also is super into the whole competitive part. There's very few hostels that actually get very competitive, and From what we have seen, there is no question. Toxic competitivity is really not something that exists between them. But from what we've seen, these are the memories you create on campus. Matlab, when you are constantly slogging your nights for one dramatics production, or when you are running after old previous year sets for different quizzes, matlab, that is with your team, and knowing that you have a cause to work towards, which is your hostel's victory, your college's victory at the Inter-IIT. And so it's a, I think from a hostel perspective, it greatly influences hostel culture. It's very positive in my opinion, where when you know that the incoming batch is going to see that we won a trophy the last year, and when exactly, and the outgoing batch has something to show for like their leadership skills of that year. There are edge cases where the competitivity gets too much. I will acknowledge that. And that is why we're also trying as a board to move towards to also include few more liberal initiatives. As you might have seen in my SOP, we're trying to go and try to have just recreational nights in hostels where cultural secretaries can get everyone invited in their hostel and just jam to music, order some snacks. I will not elaborate anymore on what else, but yeah.
Okay.
Basically.
So let's talk about your journey as a Cultu last year. You basically dragged Shivalik from
we were 11th.
You were 11th
last
to last year, and you dragged it to second. And that my friends in Shivalik, they used to praise you a lot. Like, you are putting in a lot of efforts, and basically like, you were in every competition, you were not taking any competition lightly, and you were like putting in a lot of efforts in everything and not leaving anything behind. So what did you do, like, to just from a hostel like which was considered dead culturally, you brought it to like a second, and it wasn't like you missed out by a lot of points, you just missed out by a few points the first position.
Yeah, there are many regrets here, just almost making it. So that's a great question actually, thank you for asking me. I'd love to talk about this part. So when at the end of my second year, when we had to do a street play together with Kumao, I got to see the gigantic difference between the way we approached events and the way Kumao seniors approached events. And the culture in Kumao was heavily competitive. They gave a lot of importance to their events as compared to the, I'd say, slightly more lax attitude that we had until 2 years ago. And we saw I got to see how on top of things they always were. They always knew what they had to do. They planned it out perfectly. They executed it without any flaws. And at the end of the day, the result shows for it. We came third in that street play, but I was in awe of how seriously they treated it. And not just the street play, like throughout, I could see how the entire Kumao cultural machine worked. Like, okay, maybe this is too much Kumao praise, but they were always on top of all their club standings. They were always keeping track of their scores, always trying to see where they can get their next few points out of. So it's a very similar approach that I tried following in my previous year, holding meets with my club representatives, getting like a timeline of the calendars, a timeline of the workshops they plan on holding, trying to figure out which clubs we actually have really good chances in based on. There is a luck of the draw involved in the talent that you have. I will admit that, but there is a lot that you can do even by just preparing very hard. So we tried our best to. The preparing part is in your control. We tried our best to do that. Always in advance, prepare workshops, plan out how you're going to approach the event, plan out the teams you're going to be sending to events, say for a QC event. For collab events, again, do your best to get a team that you gel well with. But when it fails, also again, because we tried our best to team up with the teams that we thought we'd have great chemistry with when it came to collab events. But sometimes things just don't work in your favor, the way collaborations are set up. So in that case also, it's just pure hard work for preparation. And it sounds like I really did a lot of the planning and I was so on top of things. That is not the case. I had a very capable team of amazing representatives and really talented people in my hostel who helped out throughout the year, who were always there for me when I needed it. And really, my job was just facilitating them more than anything else.
So like you did a lot, and do you expect Shivalik to now approach, now like topple Satpura and then?
Oh right, so this part. So hold up. So I am still very bummed out by the fact that we lost because of the 3 visual arts. PFC fact design ने बहुत धोखा दे दिया हमें. That despite all our prep, we could not solve for that. एक PFC comp के we unfortunately got disqualified. एंड हमारे पॉइंट्स बहुत टूट गए थे उसमें.
संस्कार वाला आई थिंक.
हाँ, संस्कार के साथ भी शिवालिक संस्कार ज्वाला टीम अप किए थे एंड वी वर डिस्क्वालिफाइड प्रीटी मच बिकॉज ऑफ अ टाइनी लिटिल फ्लॉ. एंड अब क्या बताएं यार, मतलब देयर आर मेनी फैक्टर्स दैट आई वांट टू ब्लेम हियर कि सतपुरा में डिजाइन अच्छे थे, बट द पॉइंट इज कि उसमें मतलब दैट माइट बी अ फैक्टर. आई वोंट से एनीमोर. बिटर नहीं साउंड करना है मुझे.
फेयर इनफ है मतलब. Okay, so I think now you worked with a team of reps. Now you're going to be working with a team of cultus. So how do you approach this like new thing? Like पहले तो आपको पता था कि he was like let's say the drama rep. He is he specializes in this field. Now there are people from all the there are some people who are from the same cultural background, but then there are some people who are not from that background. So आप सारे clubs कैसे balance करते हो? Like cultus then seckies मतलब big team है. So how is this different from managing let's say a rep team?
Right, that's a good question. A rep team is always completely fresh. कि वो एक साल देखें, थोड़ा पार्ट लिए हैं, and then they've taken up a POR. So it's their first time actually admin side की पहली exposure होती है वो. Not even admin side, I'd say organizing side की. Third year is when you actually start. You've participated in BRCA, you've seen organizing parts of BRCA. And this is the background you treat them with as well. So when they become a cultu or club secchi, they have much more admin side work as well. Cultus not as much admin side work. Sekkis have a lot of admin side work, and you have to treat them adequately because they have expertise in their boards in their fields, like in their clubs. So yeah, when it comes to treating them, the main difference is that now they've had an entire year of exposure. So from being a rep to becoming a cultural secretary or club secretary, they've seen much more. They're much more experienced. You have to treat them as more, in very simple terms, more of an adult.
Okay.
Although I might not be qualified to be calling some of them, but in any case, I hope I've got my point across. You treat them as someone more experienced.
Yeah. Okay, you got your point across to me actually. So now to end it all up, would you like to give some other details about BRC as a whole to the audience, or share some of your own experiences that might motivate them to join the events of the board and of the clubs, or actually attend a Rendezvous?
Okay, so that's a great question. Matlab, that's actually on a different note. All of my social circles, my interactions, everything is developed because of BRCA. Matlab, I owe a lot to the board, and if we're talking about lovely things that I found amazing about the board, it's just how the warmth I felt when I tried going into different fields. Like the warmth I got from my hostel seniors, always ready to help me, support me, guide me. The warmth I got from other seniors in the institute, who you might think would be inclined because of the GC or competitivity to not really help you out. You would find that anyone in any club in BRCA is always willing to include you, always willing to help you learn, help you grow and get much better at it. And so this is something. I was a dramatics rep in my second year, and I loved the drama, the ecosystem, and I fell in love with even the quizzing and the literary ecosystem. And that is something I carried forward with me in my third year, and even now in my fourth year, in my GSec tenure as well. And it's just that's the vibes exactly. The vibes are immaculate, if I may. But specific incidents. So for specific incidents, when we went out once on a quizzing external comp, our seniors basically, they took us to they had no incentive to really do anything, go out of their way and help us. We were there to participate in an event and come back, but our seniors pulled us in. Our seniors pulled us into, they stopped us. They're like, yeah, no, we're not going home right now. Yeah, chalo, come with us. We're going to Domino's. They bought us food. We talked for a long time. We got to know each other. And this second year की बात है. Back when drama tenure चल रहा था, comp चल रहा था. So this is something I found. I wasn't a quizzing rep, and the inclusivity I felt from senior immaculate vibes.
Basically, like, if I want to add on that point also, last year I went to an external with Yashas, I think he remembers, the sitcom quiz हुई थी, and उसके बाद भी like Yashas went out of his way. He was never a quizzing rep. He was like, okay, he at that point I think he was a GSec, but he still went out of his way and he still treated us with like, I think, ice creams and stuff, because then we were getting late, and I think we then went to Burger King or something, and he still treated us there also. So I think the boards in general, they provide a very welcoming environment, and again you just said vibes, so yeah, vibes. A last question from my end, which basically, sorry, this is going to be the last question, I forgot it. Do you have like any words of encouragement to the DepC freshers, the freshers who are coming in now, who are aiming for DepC, and why should they participate in the board?
So, all the department change, I understand, it's very important that you have your career goals sorted and you go into a stream that you think is apt for you. I would say that, again, I know for myself, I have very social needs. Matlab, I thrive on social interaction and I love meeting people. And it's not very hard to balance with academics, I would say, in your first year. It gets just try, I would say. Please give it a shot. Go to events, meet new people. You might discover something new about yourself, which I learned a lot about myself through BRCA. But yes, if your priorities are set in stone and you want to aim for it, you're aiming for a department change, then maybe stick to it. That's not a bad idea.
That's fair enough. It's a nice meeting you.
This was a great interview, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.